We're here with the BEONAIR network of media schools. And for those of you who have not joined us before, we are 7 media schools that do hands-on training in audio, video, digital media. We're Ohio Media School, Illinois Media School, Colorado Media School, and Miami Media School. We've been around for about 36 years, and we have been training professionals of all ages that are looking for that opportunity to make their break into the media market. And so our decision as a company was to create this professional webinar series where we could bring professionals from the industry in to a platform where it's really kind of an intimate setting where you're going to be able to exchange in conversation and some Q&A and really get some good training that you probably wouldn't get in a classroom. Our goal is that we have our students, current students that are here, we have alumni that are here, and we really open this up to anybody who's out floating around on social media that might find this information valuable and helpful. And we invite everybody in to be our guest and to be our friend and to join our family of media experts so that we can all grow together in this webinar series. So this is our 3rd installment, and here we are. We are the 1st and 3rd Monday of each month. And tonight we're very, very excited to bring you the webinar series of Telling the Story. And we have a great guest for you tonight. Myriam Masihy is how'd I do? I did pretty good, didn't I? Yeah, it's such an easy name. It's a great name. Here from the Miami area. She has a lot of experience in reporting, investigative reporting, and even along the pathway, she did a little bit of a pivot because of a health issue that really woke her up to understanding the importance of health and wellness and spreading the word not only within her own community, but outside the community, especially as we look at, the past couple of years with the pandemic. A lot of us don't put ourselves first for health and welfare. And if we're not doing well, the people around us can't flourish as well. So Myriam's involved in many philanthropic projects, and she's a bastion of knowledge. You could see behind her a couple of those Emmy Awards. She is an Emmy Award winning reporter, and she is going to share with us quite a bit of information about branding and news. And our moderator, just a brief introduction of our moderator, we are so very happy to have you here with us, Edgar Garcia. Edgar is one of our fabulous instructors at the Miami Media School. He's a voiceover expert. He's on air, and you will hear him around the world. He has a wonderful voice, and when you hear him, you will understand why everybody wants to learn from him and grow with him. So without further ado, I just want to remind you, we really are in the live platform. So I recommend that everybody mute your microphones. If we're hearing some noise, we might mute for you. So if you can just go ahead and do that ahead of time, that would be great. Also, if you notice at the top of the screen, if you're unfamiliar with using Teams, there's a little bubble chat. If you have any questions that you would like to ask Myriam as you're thinking about them, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll take some breaks to answer some questions and really have an opportunity for you to engage with Myriam and Edgar as we move along and learn more about our social media presence and being on air in today's world. So thank you, welcome, and take it away. I'll hand it over to Edgar and Myriam.
Thank you so much, Linda, for those words and that introduction. Well, it is a pleasure for me to be here, guys, and to host, if I can say that, this webinar with Myriam here, a great and very well-known reporter here in Miami. She has done groundbreaking work here that has, led to interesting things that have happened after the things she have done. We'll get into that later on, and we'll find out from her own voice what she has been doing so far in these last years. But it's important for you guys to understand one of the things that we will be discussing tonight is basically her beginnings, how she did it, how she does it, and how she will continue doing the things she does to maintain a place in this and I call it, and maybe Myriam will be agreeing with me, this ungrateful industry at a time, because sometimes it's so hard, and it is something that we have been discussing with our students every time, and I tell them all the time, Myriam, just so you know, that they were about to embark in an industry that has a lot to offer, but also that requires a lot of effort and a lot of preparation, because otherwise we won't be able to get to the places that we want to go. So that's one of the things that I guess makes us invite Myriam, so you guys firsthand can know a little bit more about how she is able to do the things that she does and how she does them. So Myriam, welcome. Thank you very much for accepting
Thank
our
you, Edgar.
invitation. And let's dive into this. I want you to start basically knowing a little bit how you got started on this, and your current role as an Emmy-winning investigative reporter.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something you said just so I don't forget, because I'm not elderly, but I'm a senior reporter. That means that I'll forget things. I'm gonna say that, you know, it is a very difficult industry, and you are only as good as your last report. So people are like, "Oh, you have all these Emmys. You know, when are you going to stop?" I'm like, I always have to try to be, you know, better than I was last year, because they're not going to remember what I did last year. You have to, you know, continue to work. So this is an industry where you have to continue to work. And I started, and it's funny that I have Edgar with me. I don't sound as great as Edgar, but I was a voiceover talent. And I think it was because I'm bilingual. I studied in Chile. My university, I did it in Chile. And I was able to do voice work in Chile for different airlines. I was the prompt girl, you know, the press one, o prima uno, that kind of work. So when I graduated and I moved back here where I grew up half of my life, I looked for a place where I could do voice work, where I could actually record for Chile, because back then you couldn't record at home like you do now. You know, it was a long time ago, folks. And so I called up a company called Audiocom back then. I don't know if Audiocom's still around. Edgar, you know a lot more about this.
No, it's not that current. We are using basically something we call Source Connect.
Okay.
It's a basic app that lets you connect to a studio anywhere in the world, and you can record and listen and talk to the agency, for example, on a live basis, and they can receive all the information, all the data in real time. So it's a pretty cool thing that we have right now, and it works for everybody.
Amazing. Well, I showed up at this Audiocom place and I said, listen, I need to borrow your studio. You know, how much would you rent it for me so I can record for Chile? And they're like, well, listen, we've been trying to get those airlines here in Miami. We'll loan you the studio if you record our prompts so that we can get those airlines. And I'm like, that sounds good. So I did it, and then I walked out of there, and they got the airlines, and I was able to do that. But you know, it was freelance work, and I needed a job. And they said, you know, go to this place called Metro Networks, which I do believe still exists. And you know, they might have work. They do news, traffic, and weather for radio and TV. So I headed over there, and I always tell this story because I think it's so fascinating that they didn't have a job. And I was like, well, that stinks. And they're like, but wait a minute, do you know how to edit audio? And I said, yeah. He goes, and you're bilingual? Yeah. And they're like, you know what? This is a 2-for-1 special here. So they made a job for me, because back then not everybody did. I mean, when I studied, I didn't have to edit audio, but I learned it because I'm curious that way. And I always tell everybody, learn everything you can, because sometime down the road you're going to use it. And in that moment, they hired me because I was bilingual and because I edited audio. And I started working doing news for WIOD, WQBA in Spanish, you know, all these radio stations. I got paid a whole $9 an hour. I was still broke. I was on every radio station, but I was so broke. But I was excited because I was making a living, you know, sort of, almost a living. And Univision started their first morning show back then, and they came to us. And although I studied television, I wasn't a TV person. And they said, well, listen, we need to do some demos for them because they need a traffic reporter. I'm like, well, not me. I get lost. I can't do traffic. I can't reroute people. They're like, no, we have somebody, but they just need 3 people in the demo for Helga Silva, which is a huge news director here, now my news director to this date in Telemundo. And I said, okay, well, I did the demo. And then they come back a week later and they're like, she picked you. And I'm like, what do you mean she picked you? I can't do traffic. Because traffic reporters, you know, the ones I grew up listening to were amazing. They rerouted you. They're like, well, this is closed, but you can take here and make a left. I was like, I can't do that. So I was broke and I had to do it. And I started doing traffic for television, and you could tell I didn't know what I was doing. I would do it as a news person. And then I'd turn around and I'd do my news hits for radio. And the producer there in the morning show started hearing me do breaking news. And they're like, hey, why don't you do that for us? And I'm like, well, news I can do. So I started doing their breaking news, like the chopper was over something, and I would do their breaking news. And then slowly I ended up covering Elian, which many people here probably weren't born during Elian. It was a big story here in the Miami community, a Cuban child that was, brought by his mom, who died in the Straits, and he showed up in an inner tube, and there was a fight between Cuba and the US. And so the day the US actually raided the home of the family here to take that child back to Cuba, there was nobody at that home. And they put up the chopper and they sent me up. I get motion sickness. So I was doing reports and throwing up and doing reports and throwing up. I still run into that pilot. She's like, you were a trooper when you were a kid. I said, I was crazy. And that's how I started. I took a chance, and, I was prepared. I did study this. But when they said, hey, you need to go on the chopper, I was like, sure, send me in the chopper. And I took a risk. And then the news director took notice, and she started hiring me to do freelance work, which was amazing because I would get paid by shifts, and I would work every shift. I could tell you I was very young because I would work the morning shift in Metro, the noon newscast. I would do the briefs for Univision. I would get paid for that shift. And then I would do the night shift as a reporter. I would get paid for that shift. I'd sleep a couple hours and go back, but I was hungry, literally. And I did all the shifts so I could make ends meet. And that's how I started. I started trying to, taking every chance I could and saying yes and being adventurous and being prepared too. I mean, I was prepared as a journalist to do the work, but I didn't want to be on TV. And it's funny because I still don't like being on TV, 20 something years later.